All right, guys. So we are doing 3-3. We're all doing it remotely today. So these are your notes, and you're going to have to bear with me because I'm doing this at my kitchen table with my cell phone. So, be patient with me. Today we are proving lines parallel, which means you do have proofs today. They have not fully gone away. And you can prove lines parallel by the following reasons. So you've got corresponding angles converse, you've got alternate interior angles converse, your alternate exterior angles converse, and your consecutive interiors converse. If you remember in chapter 2, we dealt with converses. We dealt with our conditional, converse, inverse, and contrapositive. And all your converse is it flips your statement. So in lesson 3-2, we started with statements. If two lines are parallel and cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. Well, today you're saying if two lines are cut by a transversal so that corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Meaning, so if you take this little figure here, an example of corresponding angles would be, 1 and 5. So sorry, I forgot how difficult this is. If angle 1 is congruent to angle 5, then line L is parallel to line M. L and M, oops, you can't see that. L and M, there we go. Your alternate interior angles converse says if two lines are cut by a transversal so that alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Your alternate interiors, 3 and 5 or 4 and 6, however you see that. So if angle 3 is congruent to angle 5, then line L is parallel to line M. Your alternate exterior angles converse says if two lines are cut by a transversal so that alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Coming back up here to our figure, an example of alternate exteriors would be 1 and 7 or 2 and 8. So back down here, if angle 1, forgot the word if. And my eraser doesn't erase. If angle 1 is congruent to angle 7, then line L is parallel to line M. And lastly, you've got your consecutive interior angles converse that says if two lines are cut by a transversal so that consecutive interior angles are supplementary, remember, up here, those have to equal 180 or those have to equal 180, then the lines are parallel. Meaning if the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 6 equals 180 degrees, then line L is parallel to line M. All right, so those are postulates and theorems that correspond to your converse theorems. So this is practicing it. Given the following information, determine which lines, if any, are parallel. State the converse that justifies your answer. So if I have that 2, let's see how I can rotate this. If 2 is congruent to 4, well, 2 is here and 4 is here. Those are corresponding angles, and that's on that's on line D, that's on line C, that's my transversal. So that means that line C is parallel to line D. And here's where I need you to pay attention, because you can't just write corresponding angles like we did in the last lesson, because every single one of these has the word converse attached to it. So this is your corresponding angle. I might have to get a new pencil. Angles converse. Going back over here, let's erase our marks here. Now you're talking about angle 5 and angle 10. Angle 5 is right here. Angle 10 is right here. Well, those are alternate interiors, and specifically 10 is on line, let's see, in this case it would be on line B. 5 is on line A, and C is my transversal on this one, which means that A is parallel to B, and that is my alternate interior angles converse. C says, let's keep erasing all of this nonsense, that angle 6 plus angle 10 is 180 degrees. Well, 6 and 10, those are interiors, and they lie specifically between lines A and B, which means that A is parallel to B again. Only instead of alternate interiors, these are consecutive interiors. And that's a converse. D. D is, let's see, which angles are we using on D? 1 and 14. So 1 is here, 14 is here. Good Lord. 1 and 14, those are alternate exteriors. They're exterior on line A and line B. So yet again, line A is parallel to line B. Our reasoning, these are alternate exterior angles, converse. Oops. On E, we're talking about 14 and 15. So 14 plus 15 equals 180, which, you know, if we turn it this way, well, those are in between those two lines, right? It's in between C and D, which means that C is parallel to D, and those are consecutive interiors again. We can go ahead and abbreviate that, consecutive interior angles, and then don't forget the word converse. Oops, might help if you could see that, huh? F uses angle 11 and 16. So 11 is here, 16 is here. Well, while those are special angles, those are only vertical angles, and vertical angles don't prove anything parallel. We just know that vertical angles are congruent. So F, 11 and 16, that's a none. There are no parallel lines. There's no special relationship other than the fact that they're verticals. 4 and 15. 4 is here. 15 is here. Well, 4 is on this line. 15 is on this line. That is my transversal, which means that A is parallel to B. My transversal would be D. And those are alternate exteriors. There we go. H is talking about angle 10 and angle 12. Angle 10 is right here. Angle 12 is right here. So 10 and 12 are corresponding. They're both in that top right corner if we're talking about this cluster and this cluster. So top right corner, if they're congruent, that means that these two lines are parallel. So C is parallel to D, and that is your corresponding angles converse. And yes, you have to write out, good Lord, children, I'm sorry. You have to write out the word converse. You don't get lazy on me and write C-O-N, please. I is that, you know, I got really good at balancing this all one-handed in the spring. I'm not so good at it anymore. 9 plus 13 is 180. Well, 9's here. 13's here. Those are a linear pair. A linear pair does not prove that anything's parallel. So I, again, is a none. No relationship. Let's see. Then we've got 2 and 7. 2's here, 7's here. That's another one where if you turn your picture a little bit, 2 and 7, those lie in between line C and line D. Those are on opposite sides of the transversal. So that makes C parallel to D, and that is your alternate interior angles converse. Oh boy. And then lastly on this page, lastly, you've got angle 6 and 11. 6 and 11. If you remember, we did a couple examples like this a couple days ago where I asked you to identify the relationship. And if you remember, that is on this cluster. This is on this cluster. There is no transversal connecting those clusters of angles. There's no relationship there. So this is another none because there's no, like I said, there's no transversal that connects 6 and 11. These clusters are completely separate, so you have to treat them that way. So that one's a none. I think for this one, just because it's such a similar figure, I'm going to skip it. I mean, really, the only difference, let me see, I'm looking at my note packet at the same time. You've got an extra set of parallel lines in there. I will upload your completely filled out notes for this lesson as well in case you want those answers, just to double check yourself. But for purposes of this video, I'm just going to skip it for the time being. Not too complicated. Oh, sorry. Now, for the proofs. These proofs really are not all that complicated. Not very, I don't think. It does require you to retain some of that knowledge that we learned. So complete the proof below by filling in the missing reasons. Our given for number 3 is that angle 4 and angle 5 are supplementary. So if we come over here, 4 and 5 are supplementary. And I'm trying to prove that line J is parallel to line K. So I'm trying to prove that this is parallel to this. I don't have that yet. Well, if you look, 4 and 5 are consecutive interiors. Consecutive interiors have to have a sum of 180 degrees. Currently, we know they're supplementary. Well, logic, use that logic you've got. Supplementary means they add up to 180. So all we have to do is write the reasons. It is a 3-step proof. You can't get any easier than this. Your reason number 1, is given, because reason number 1 is always given, no matter what. Reason number 1 is always given. Number 2, if you remember, we did this in a couple of the other proofs. We're going from supplementary, we're going from the words supplementary to it equaling 180. If you go from words to an equal sign, that means you have a definition. Specifically, we have a definition of supplementary angles. And you can abbreviate supplementary to SUPP, and we can abbreviate angles as so. Then, if the measure of angle 4 plus the measure of angle 5 is 180 degrees, then J is parallel to K. Again, 4 and 5, those were consecutive interiors. So this is our consecutive interior angles converse. Again, you cannot forget that word converse, boys and girls. That's really important. Proof number 4, and I gotta back up here because that one's a little bit bigger. It tells you angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. Well, you can see that. A linear pair are angles that are adjacent and form a straight line. Then it tells you angle 1 and angle 4 are supplementary. Supplementary is just a fancy way of saying 180 degrees. We are trying to prove that A is parallel to B. So, if we start with what we're given angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair. So, reason number 1 is always your given. If you remember, if you have a semicolon or a comma, you have to make sure that all of your given statement is in your statement number 1. We're missing this half. This half is not right here, which means you've got to find it. If you look hard enough, it's step number 3. Given. Now. How did we go from 1 to 2? Well, your key words here, linear pair and supplementary. This is all words. If angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair, then angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary. If it is all words, then you have a theorem, keyword, supplement theorem. If you've got the word supplementary, supplement. So this is your supplement theorem. So knowing that, now we're looking at from 2 to 3. Well, let me rephrase that. We're not looking from 2 to 3. We are looking at 2 and 3. We're looking at both of these, which says if angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, and if angle 1 and angle 4 are supplementary, then angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. We went over this. If this plus this equals 180, and this plus this equals 180, then these two things have to be the same, otherwise they can't equal 180. This is your congruent supplements theorem. Now, come back over here, because we're talking about angle 2 and angle 4, which means we need our figure. 2 is here, 4 is here. Those are corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are, in fact, supposed to be congruent on parallel lines. We're just trying to prove it backwards. So if 2 and 4 are congruent, then A and B are parallel, which is your corresponding angles converse. You are going to have a proof on your quiz. I will go over with you what kind of proof it's going to be, and that way you know what to expect, and there's going to be a proof on your review. The proof on your quiz is going to be fill in the blank. I give you all the statements. All you have to do is fill in the reasons. It's short, sweet, to the point, nothing too complicated. One more page of notes, and then we're done for this lesson. So now you're proving lines parallel with algebra. We did this. We've already done this. We just did it backwards. We did it with, hey, those are corresponding angles. That means they're congruent. Or those are parallel lines. They're corresponding angles. That means they're congruent. Now you're saying, all right, these two, these are alternate interiors. So our converse is your alternate interior. And because the word converse is already there, you don't need to relist it. If you remember, alternate interiors should be congruent. So we set 10x minus 23 equal to 137. We get 10x equals 160. X equals 16. That's it. Number two says, no, it doesn't say anything. Never mind. You're finding x, so the A is parallel to B. This angle and this angle, those are corresponding. So this is you just write corresponding. Corresponding angles should be congruent. 9x plus 11 equals 74. 9x equals 63. X equals 7. This should really just be practice for you guys. On this one, you've got 96 here, 6x minus 30 here. If they're on the same side on the inside, that means they are consecutive interiors. Consecutive interiors are supplementary. These are the only ones that are 180 degrees. 6x minus 30 plus that 96 equals 180 degrees. 6x plus 66 equals 180. 6x equals 114. X equals 19. Same thing over and over and over again, boys and girls. So number 4, this angle here, this angle here, those are alternate exteriors. Alternate exteriors are congruent. So we're going to set 7x plus 5 equal to 33. 7x equals 28. X equals 4. Much like the day we did this in our notes, 5, 6, and 7 are, and technically 8, we're going to go ahead and do 8, but they're identical to what we've been doing. Really not, I don't think it's necessary to go over them just because it is so easy. But number 8, one thing I do want to cover with you, first of all, these are corresponding angles. Every single year, kids get tripped up because of this little box right here. What does the box mean? The box means 90 degrees. You simply set 4x minus 18 equal to 90 and solve it. So don't get tripped up if you see that box. Just remember the box is 90 and you can move on with your day. And yeah, I think you should be good with the rest of them. They're fairly simple. I mean, you've got 2 x's on each of the rest of them, just meaning you're going to have an x on both sides of your equation, or you're going to be combining like terms with x's, for example, like in 6 and 10. So if you have questions, you can email me throughout the day. I will be available via email, just, couldn't be in class today. So I hope you guys had a good day. Like I said, let me know if you have questions.